Good morning, everybody. My name is Craig Moody, managing partner and one of the two owners of Verdis Group, a small but mighty sustainability consulting firm based in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about a presentation that I gave at the 2021 Business Ethics Alliance EthicSpace Conference, which occurred in, I believe it was November 19th. I was invited to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing, and in particular, focusing on environment, social, and governance, so ESG work that we're doing. And so I just wanted to give a quick high-level overview of the things that I talked about, and we'll find an opportunity to link to more information. But for today, that's really kind of what we wanted to talk about. And before I do that, I just really hope that everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I had a really great one and hope that you and your loved ones did as well. It was an ethics conference, right? So I found it really important to make sure that those folks that came to listen to me talk about ESG work kept that in the back of their mind as we talked about what ESG is and what it means and where it's been and where it's going and really what was important. The other thing that I'll really double down on here was a point that I made there as well, which was I really focused on the E. That's our work, that's what we're doing, and that's what we know. And so while I provided a high level of context for what was happening with respect to ESG in the marketplace, I really wanted to zero in on the E side of this. I started by talking a little bit about stakeholder capitalism and what we're seeing in that marketplace. The long and short of it is this: businesses are, generally speaking, no longer really strictly focused on short-term profits, which is a good thing. They are very much focused on creating benefits for all of their stakeholders. So we had some discussion about, okay, well, what does that mean? Who is a stakeholder? And it's a very broad definition. That's one of the most important things that I think most organizations need to think about is defining what a stakeholder is. But once you do that, it's very clear that it's much more than just the owners of the company, the shareholders. It's your employees, your customers, the communities in which you work and live. It's your supply chain. So it's a very holistic view, and stakeholder capitalism is very much taking root. Really a couple kind of guiding questions that we discussed as well is, and this comes from, I'm reading the book Net Positive right now, is the world better off because your business is in it? And that's really, when we really boil it down, that's really what we're talking about when it comes to stakeholder capitalism is the world better as a result of your business being in it? It's a really important question. And again, as we think about that environmentally, it really comes down to, is your business having a net positive environmental impact beyond the social and the governance side, certainly looking at the environmental side. We also talked a little bit about really what's driving a bigger movement towards incorporating environmentalism into a business's work. So sustainability, environmentalism, there are multiple different ways to define that. We talked a little bit about the United Nations recent report around climate change, the IPCC report that came out in August. And really, again, and we've talked about this via Facebook Live before, it's happening, humans are causing it, but there's still time to mitigate some of the worst damage. That was really the critical thing that we left people with when it came to the environmental movement. So we talked a little bit about the consequences of the environmental work, and there are some scary ones, but we didn't strictly limit it to the worst of it. We talked a little bit about the benefits as well, and there are benefits to be had for organizations that take this on in a meaningful way. Really, it is good for business. Full stop, period. That's undeniable, and we cited many sources that indicate as much. So first things first, we laid out the drivers, really what's driving the significant increase in ESG work that is happening out there. And then we talked a little bit about some different frameworks and tools that organizations could or should use when it comes to, in particular, their environmental sustainability work and where they could go. A few things to note. We talked a little bit about ecosystem services and what those are. We talked about Kate Raworth's donut of social and planetary boundaries. And we spent a pretty good amount of time on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and kind of frame those so that people could start to better understand what falls into this bucket and what doesn't. To be sure, the way that the United Nations is defining sustainability is much more holistic and goes well beyond the environmental impact. It goes into much, much more. And that was really important. We shared some work that our friends at Schooler here, located here in Omaha, are doing, and some of the work that they've put out that shows what their priorities are and how they map against the United Nations SDGs, which is really cool to cite a local example that's pretty well done. And then we talked about a couple of other really important next steps for most organizations to take when it comes to their environmental work as it relates to their ESG. And I'll throw in corporate social responsibility. Let's just mix those two together for today. The first was a materiality assessment. So really trying to understand and going through the steps to determine what is important to your stakeholders and what's the potential impact on your business. So there's a way to sort of map that out through a process that you go through to try and understand, is there likely a high impact to your business, and are your stakeholders likely to find it important when it comes to things like climate change and pollution and biodiversity and any of those other things. And again, we didn't limit it necessarily to the environmental impacts. We talked about the social and governance as well. So a materiality assessment is something that I think most organizations, if they're certainly early in their journey, should do. And we framed up exactly kind of how that might look and work and how it might happen. And then the next framework that we talked about was conducting a greenhouse gas inventory. Again, this is something that the greenhouse gas protocol really lays out and identifies what the process is and how you approach it. So I spent a little bit of time talking with folks about what those protocols are and how to go forward in doing that, looking at both scope 1, scope 2, and select scope 3, and ideally all scope 3 emissions for an organization. So we talked about the framework of the process for doing that. And then finally, the last thing we talked about was setting goals. And I really directed them to take a look at what good goal setting looks like. Obviously, it starts with establishing that baseline, but we really re-emphasized the need for organizations to set science-based goals. So in other words, especially as it relates to climate change, science tells us that as a society, as a planet, we need to hit certain thresholds for CO2 in the atmosphere, for greenhouse gases. And so when you set goals, you should really use that to help you determine what kind of goals you should be setting. They need to be based in science. Science should inform essentially what your goal should be and what sort of emissions should be allowed both to 2030 and 2050 are really kind of the two key thresholds there for you. We wrapped up just kind of hitting a couple points and really didn't get into execution and implementation. Great to have a materiality assessment, get your greenhouse gas inventory done, start working towards some goals, but ultimately it really boils down to execution. If we as a society set really robust goals, that's all well, great, and good, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot unless we actually take action and work towards those goals. And so that's kind of where we finished, was again connecting the dots between environmentalism and ESG work and ethics. And again, we think it's really important that that we reinforce the fact that this is an ethical issue, and it's upon us to take action and move forward. So with all of that said, we're seeing a ton of ESG work, especially helping organizations really get tight on that environmental side. But as I said earlier, when we look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, there's a lot of bleed between all of those things, and it can get really, really complicated really, really quick. So, of course, if you are out there and you have this challenge in front of you, if you're trying to get organized on your corporate social responsibility work, in particular as it relates to sustainability, environmental work, give us a call, verdisgroup.com. I'm at craig@verdisgroup.com. Give us a shout. We'll talk with you and help you get it figured out and really get you on the trajectory to ensuring that your work going forward is aligned with what science is telling you to do. Thanks for the time. I hope you all have a wonderful week. It's been a pleasure as always. Go out and have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye.